we suggested earlier today that there be some permanent recognition by the NFL of John Madden. He's already kind of got it through the video game, but that doesn't give the NFL an out. I think that makes it even more urgent that they find a way to create the proper tribute. It can't be something small. It's got to be something big. It's got to be named Madden, and it's got to be permanent. And, I mean, the Lombardi Trophy would be perfect, but they're not going to take away. I mean, the Lombardi Trophy, but it's got to be that iconic. Whatever they slap John Madden's name on has to become something that will always be that, and it'll be a great compliment to the fact that his name's always going to be on the video game.
Well, there was some suggestion that I think I saw on Twitter earlier or something, maybe, that instead of calling it an all-pro team, call it the all-Madden team. And so you're kind of hearkening back to what he used to do with himself and saying, like, hey, these are all the guys that I thought were the best, and they play, the way that I love to watch play. So that's one thing. I mean, whether it's, you're naming the coach of the year after him, although I think you said in the text chain, like, that should be reserved for Bill Belichick. And frankly, I kind of agree with you on that. MVP, is it the John Madden MVP award? There is some sort of way to memorialize him and make it right, because he really should have his name somewhere that means something really, really so much for the NFL. It could be like the John Madden Super Bowl game as well, or something of that nature. Like you said, it's got to be big.
I think the idea of calling the All-Pro team the All-Madden team is perfect, but it's not enough. And maybe it's a combination. Maybe at the end of the day, you call the All-Pro team the All-Madden team, and you call the Pro Football Hall of Fame the John Madden Pro Football Hall of Fame, right? I short of calling the Super Bowl the John Madden Super Bowl, which I would be fine with. I could get behind that. I just think that is such a sacred term for the NFL. They don't want to do anything to that term. Hell, I'd be fine with calling it the Madden Football League, frankly. I mean, national, who cares? Or remake the shield in the image of John Madden. But I think a combination of something like the All-Madden team and the John Madden Pro Football Hall of Fame. You want to give the Hall of Fame some cachet? Put his name on it. If his family's okay with it, that's the ultimate permanent honor. And he's the guy that coined the idea that the Busts talk to each other tonight, and it's this magical thing. It's a magical place, or it's supposed to be. You want to make it a little more magical, you call it the John Madden Pro Football Hall of Fame.
That's exactly what I was going to bring up. What he said in his speech about the Busts talking to each other every night once the last person locks the door. I think that really would be a good honor for him, to have that building down in Canton, Ohio, named the John Madden Pro Football Hall of Fame. I think that would be a fitting tribute.
Another thing that isn't widely known about John Madden, we're aware of his exploits as a coach, as a broadcaster, as the video game mogul. But after he retired from NBC following Super Bowl 43, he became very active in the push for player safety. We wrote something about it earlier today. He was the first chair of the coaches subcommittee to the competition committee, which was involved in recommending rule changes to the competition committee, and a lot of it came from safety. He was adamant about getting players who may be concussed off the field. He was livid at times when there were lapses. The Case Keenum situation from 2015 when he was playing for the Rams in Baltimore, and it was clear he had no business being anywhere near the field.
Yeah.
That was John Madden. John Madden was beside himself over that. The year before, Jaleel Adali, the Chargers, on a Thursday night game, got back in when he shouldn't have been. There was a quote that we got from a source in the middle of all of it where Madden's attitude was, if these people who are responsible for protecting these guys can't do it, we got to find different people to do it because it's too important. Here's some John Madden from a game in 1993. I think it was the playoff game in the 1993 season between the Vikings and the Giants. Jim McMahon had apparently suffered a concussion, and this was 16 years before the NFL woke up to concussions. Here's John Madden with his comments on how players should be handled when they suffered head injuries during games.
I think if a guy has had a concussion or has a concussion, he shouldn't play anymore. I don't agree with that. I mean, they always talk about boxing and boxing being archaic, but if a boxer, a fighter, gets knocked out, he can't fight for another month. And sometimes in football we say, oh, the guy has a slight concussion, he'll be right back in. I don't know that I ever agreed with that.
I wish that that those words would have been heeded a little more strongly, that was about the same time. It was the next year that the Mild Traumatic Brain Injury Committee was formed. And there's reporting, there's factual evidence to back up the idea that the committee spent a lot of time trying to downplay, to delay the reckoning, because they knew that there were certain risks that were inherent to the game that you could not iron out of the game. And that's what John Madden was trying to push for. Ways to reduce unnecessary risks, unnecessary head trauma, and ensure that when head trauma is suffered as an unavoidable aspect of the game, the player is properly protected. It was his idea, along with Ronnie Lott, the Hall of Fame safety, to implement the medical timeout that empowers officials to say, stop the game, we have to take a look at this player, and we have to get him out of the action if there's any chance that he has a concussion. So, and even to the point where John Madden suggested, Miles, at one point, that the game may eventually have to get rid of the three-point stance and go with a two-point stance, which would fundamentally alter the way the game looks. But it would be the offensive lineman just kind of crouched over a little bit without a hand on the ground, and the defensive lineman doing the same thing to eliminate the firing off of the ball where the heads collide and you necessarily have subconcussive brain trauma that doesn't knock a guy out, but that over the period of a career or a season or a month is going to potentially accumulate into something that can cause a problem later in life.
Right. And I think that is one of the things that, I mean, I guess I knew that maybe because of how close I am in following the sport, but I don't know that enough people really knew how staunch of an advocate Madden was for player safety. And it's one of those things where I really think that people need to know this, because if you're talking about somebody who was a former lineman, somebody who looked at the game from that perspective, basically from the inside out, and then they're saying, hey, like, this is maybe something that we need to do in terms of eliminating three-point stances just to make sure that guys are as safe and as protected as possible. That, to me, tells you just how much John Madden had player safety on his mind, where it's not just, aesthetically like, oh, well, it's not going to be the same game as it was when I coached, and that's not great. Like, no. It's all about player safety and also keeping the game in a way where guys can continue to play it for not just, 5 years, but 10 years and all the way down the line. And I think that's something that really, really should be praised when it comes to John Madden and his NFL legacy.
And he recognized that there was a clear overlap between the best interests of the game and the best interests of those who play the game. Yes. That there's been a hesitation, and this dates back to the Mild Traumatic Brain Injury Committee, a hesitation to fully and completely embrace player safety because of what it could do to change the game, to dilute the game, to undermine and reduce interest in the game. And frankly, when you look back, and those games on YouTube, the hits that were taken were brutal, and they didn't even prompt a reaction from the announcers. It was just the way the game was played then. We have seen an evolution that borders on revolution of the safety aspects becoming more and more prevalent in the game, and people are still as interested in the NFL as they've ever been, and we can try to make it even safer, and that's something that John Madden was trying to do, and that's a fitting way to honor his legacy. Let's not just shrug our shoulders and get complacent that the game is as safe as it's ever going to be. There are ways to make it safer, and the NFL has been striving year after year with the urging of John Madden to make it as safe as it could be. I was told that he still recently would be constantly getting in touch with the league office, asking for different plays to be pulled so he could study aspects of the play, looking for different angles and ideas to make the game safer. And he was unpaid as an advisor to the NFL for more than a decade. This was just something that he wanted to do. So he gave so much to the sport, and I know the sport gave much back to him during his lifetime, but now's the time. And I hope the NFL will do the right thing here. Now's the time to find the appropriate fitting tribute for John Madden that will be as permanent as the Lombardi Trophy, as permanent as anything else out there that bears someone's name. It needs to be big. It needs to be forever. And it's kind of like we'll know it, and it could be naming the Hall of Fame after him. Like I said, I'm fine with that. It could be something else. Maybe they have some other idea that we're incapable of thinking of, and that's entirely possible. It's a low bar from the idea generation standpoint, at least when I'm involved. So I hope they'll do it, and I hope it'll be right, and it'll feel like, this is the fair and proper thing to do to ensure that he'll be remembered for as long as they play football.
Yeah, I agree, Mike. And I think that they'll figure that out, because I think there are so many people who care about John Madden and who care about his legacy, and not just, from the coaching standpoint or from a former player or current player standpoint, but also in the league office, right? I think everybody has a really, really good idea of what John Madden means to pro football. And so I do believe that they'll figure it out, and they'll find a really good way to pay tribute to somebody who is as much of a legend in this sport as anyone.
Yeah, it's just so funny when you think of the different phases and the different ways and the different styles that all came through. I think of him as a coach, and I never would have dreamed that this guy who was kind of rumpled with long hair and polyester pants and his credential flying all over the place. They talk about that in the documentary. I never would have dreamed that he would be what he was as a broadcaster. And then when he became this great broadcaster, the idea of him ever linking his name to a video game, that would have been foreign. Like, it seems like the last thing he would have been interested in. And everything he's done has been wildly successful. And it's one of the great American lives of all time. In comparison to anyone else, politicians, presidents, captains of industry, John Madden lived one of the truly great American lives that have ever been lived, and he will be a constant presence for football fans for years, decades, centuries maybe to come.
Hi, I'm Mike Tirico, and thanks for watching. Make sure to hit subscribe for the latest news and highlights from NBC Sports.